morning, everybody. Happy Halloween.
Hello.
Oh, it is today. For some reason, it was
'cause
yesterday in my mind.
Everyone does weekend Halloweens
Yeah.
because it's much more fun. They should change it to that.
Oh, I forgot to bring bloody candy, mate.
I was going to suggest that we all dress up today, like keep our outfits from yesterday, because I thought it'd be funny. But then I realized mine was actually too subtle. Like, no one would actually...
Well, not to us it wasn't subtle, but to
Yeah.
your average person.
To most people in Austin, it would not be subtle. Basically, I was dressed as influencer, podcaster, spiritual leader, guide. The only thing that actually gave it away is Amber painted a third eye on my head every time I
Even
frowned.
that's not that out of the ordinary here in Austin.
Every time I frowned, it looked like my third eye winked at people.
That's a third eye winking.
That's how I pick up chicks. I wink at them with my third eye.
That's you, dude. If you actually committed to that, you could really blow up on Instagram. I feel like, but you have to commit fully so that when people look into the screen,
I
A
couldn't
southern
even-
spiritual
behind the eye.
influencer?
I couldn't even
they've
commit.
got them.
Huh? Let me tell you something about the Kundalini.
I couldn't even commit yesterday to just like if people asked what I was, to just saying, "What do you mean?" Like and just acting like I wasn't dressed up.
Oh, yeah.
I did it for 1 minute and then gave up.
Is everyone hearing us? Because I just see a comment here. It might be muted, guy. Nothing's coming through. Or maybe it's just me. I'm hoping it's just you. That would be a great troll on live streams if you got a brigade of people to just say, we can't hear anything. Yeah, see?
Is it just him?
Someone say my name, for instance, oh my God, Danny's flip-flops guy.
Flip-flops guy.
What does that mean? I can hear fine. Okay, yeah. If you're watching on Facebook, it's just you. Maybe Mark Duckerberg has not
So
allowed
we
us
were
through.
planning on doing tighter crops with the cameras, and then we ended up just doing this wide shot. So that explains my flip-flops here.
I like the wide shot. I'm watching this back here because I gets to see my room, which I've been working hard on to take us out of it. I'm just going to, you ever have a community that you set up and it's for fans and everything, and then there's just one fucking guy that talks shit on it about the band and about the albums and the songs that he doesn't like?
No.
I've done that once or twice, and it's fine. I don't think everyone should like our music. It's just fucking funny and hysterical to go onto the band's Discord and then go harp on and on about it. And I get why you would do that. It's to get the attention and to get someone like me to respond to it, because it's.
I need to go on the Discord.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, if
I haven't been on Discord, and other
been
than I just
absent from
posted to
Discord.
tell you guys we were going to be 15 minutes late.
I forget. I think it was Say My Name Friend on the Discord set up a cool thing. I don't even know what it's called. Basically, people are taking every single one of our songs and tiering it based on their favorites. So I thought I would do that about our own, but then I looked and everyone was commenting how much work it was, and then I decided I wasn't going to do that.
That's a lot of songs, yeah.
Yeah, because people really committed, and it's cool to go watch and see who likes what. And it's basically just, I don't even know what the tiers stand for. Maybe someone in the chat can say, what is like S, A, B? I mean, I get A, B, C, D. And then what is S and F? F, it means fail or something. Someone can explain in the chat there.
General.
I saw that, and I realized we have put out a lot of music.
Yeah, we're 6 albums, 10 songs on all the albums except for Egomaniac Lunatic have got 12 and 13. So we're at 65 songs. Okay, S is your top favorite, A through D are just a tier down, F is your least favorite. Okay. Yeah,
What
I
does
figured. I
S?
just didn't
What
know
does
why
S stand
means,
for?
like,
What does S stand for?
Super.
super.
Oh, I don't know. Where are they doing this, Joe? I can't see it.
Just all over the general thread on
Okay.
Discord. So you're seeing what people... Generally, what I'm seeing is the debut album is the least favorite, and I basically agree with that. It was our first album. We were still trying to figure things out. I feel like that album had potential. You know what I mean? We didn't execute it because we were young and literally just figuring out how to record and make records. But there's a lot of good songs in there that perhaps could have been...
I kind of feel like that about Lunatic as well. Lunatic I mean, it's clearly the most popular, and it's got the biggest songs, and there's definitely some good shit on there.
Oh, this guy
But,
doesn't like interference.
And I get that. I even saw Scooter, who's one of the long-term members of our Discord, was saying he's like, listen, and he's one of the most supportive, like genuinely supportive fans we've got. And he's like, listen, I tried. I just cannot get into it. And that's fine. I like hearing that. It's just when someone's just a fucking dick about it. It's like, what is the point?
He does have a logo.
Well, everyone likes shit talking. We were talking about it yesterday. It's actually like the thing that people like the most is seeing people talk shit.
Yeah.
It's there's a quote. It's like there's more bonding or in misery and hate than in like happy and love. I don't know the exact quote, but it's basically people bond over things that they hate more than they bond over things that they love. Because you can really get riled up, you know, like there's a segment, What Grinds My Gears on SNL or wherever it was. And
that was Peter Griffin from Family Guy.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
There's a news anchor, and his whole segment was, you know what really grinds my gears? I mean, yeah, I was trying to do that today because we have our little segment, which was best and worst thing from the internet. And I was looking through because I came across either on TikTok or Instagram. You guys know Zane Lowe. He used to be BBC, now he's Apple Music One. And some of his reels and things that come out of him interviewing stars are just insufferable. Not the artist most of the time. It's like him being like,
I saw one recently. There was one where he was like laying on the couch like this, like interviewing them.
Yeah. You know, because he's just one of the guys.
Yeah,
he's
buddies with everybody.
And then I went and watched a bunch, and it's like I couldn't really commit to talking shit about him because he does some good interviews, and it's like no one's wholly annoying. I mean, some people are, but he's not one of those. I felt bad.
What I felt about him is that he can't contain his contempt for the artist. Like when he has an artist that he genuinely respects he gets pretty normal.
Yeah.
And then for everyone else, he like will flatter them to the point of like ridiculousness, and you can tell that there's contempt behind it. And that's what it's like, okay, this is how this guy deals with the fact that he has to pretend to think things are great when he doesn't, you know. And
I feel like everyone does that. It's
right, except for Screaming Jay Hawkins and Jerry Lee Lewis. They don't do anything against they have zero affectation about their opinion about things and who they think is shit and who they think is good, and it's weird to watch interviews with people like that.
Yeah, you mean someone that basically doesn't have a filter, but actually doesn't have a filter, because now there's a lot of people that have got the affectation of not having a filter, you know, and they're just mean-spirited. But yeah, like you see an interview with Miles Davis, same thing. He just kind of says, you know, he's not trying to please anybody. Same thing with Bob Dylan interviews. You know,
that's what I'm looking for here. I'm just looking for this lyric from Bob Dylan's most recent album called Rough and Rowdy Ways from 2020. And it's got this track, I Contain Multitudes. He says, greedy old wolf, I'll show you my heart, but not all of it, only the hateful part. And I think he was getting at that. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll get straight.
Deep thoughts.
Science.
Deep thoughts.
Religion. Music.
Deep thoughts.
Physics. Artificial intelligence. NPR.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Deep thoughts.
This is kind of an interesting idea for discussion, I think, because we're saying people like hate, basically, and it gathers people around it, and we all love misery and suffering and negativity. And it's often, I think, people think that love and hate are opposite things. And I just wanted to ask that question. What do you think about that? Because, you know, all you need is love. Then if they're opposites, then you also equally need hate, you know, in a kind of universal sense. But are they opposites in that way?
Colloquially, yes. If you're just speaking kind of casually then yeah, they are opposites. They always go together, and there's some form of, you know, archetypal pleasure and pain. Not to reference a Chevy Mustang, but yeah, they, you know, the simplest organism moves towards things it wants and away from things it doesn't.
Right.
And that's the basis of all programming. But if you're talking about the idea that maybe there's some kind of love that has no opposite, maybe, I don't know.
Right. I guess it's just the difficulty of that word is so often used around love or hate, like, don't like. You know, it's always used in a lighter way, and inevitably then you just think about, you can get kind of into this, it's like, I feel it's the first step when people start to like go down some kind of spiritual path, is like, well, you know, hate and darkness is part of the world too. And then like a lot of people like really get into that, like, oh, I don't want to be judgmental about things, you know. And I think that's partially because you think of love as being a pole, and I don't know if it is ultimately.
I don't know either. That speaking of positive and negative and aversion, there's this guy Ivan Balabanov. He's this Bulgarian trainer. He's really amazing, and he talks dog trainer. Yeah, he always talks about if you're training your dog with only positive, you're removing half the story of evolution. You know, everything has come with an aversion to things, and there's nothing wrong with sometimes using aversion. Anyway, he goes in that. So I think from a practical life aspect of things, there's no reason to avoid aversion or negativity. Yeah.
Well, I think Lennon or McCartney or whoever wrote that song, or Harrison? Well, they were all doing a lot of LSD at the time. And so they probably experienced another state of consciousness, and the idea that all you need is love is maybe that little taste of love that they experienced in a higher state of consciousness, which is not dualistic. It doesn't have what we have to only describe things in opposites in this state of consciousness, and with language. So if the whole world was in some other state of consciousness at that, and experiencing that, maybe that lyric would be true, and maybe it is true in a sense.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean it to be like, oh, they're full of shit, or they're missing the point, because when you listen to the song, and I've listened to that song occasionally where I felt like I've been in a better or higher state, whatever that word means, and I think they touched something. At certain points in their music, it's clear. Like I don't think you can touch that many people emotionally without touching something that approaches more truth or more love or that sort of thing. So I think there was definitely some sincerity to it, and what you're saying, perhaps going above a little bit the dualistic impression of love. But it's something you kind of notice, like raising my daughter, and you're talking about like dog training, and they're basically the same thing. Mm-hmm. You know, you give them treats and then send them to their kennel. but everything we do in most instances does seem to be polar. Like it's, you know, the opposite. If I tell my daughter not to do something, it immediately, not because she's trying to do anything, it brings out the opposite reaction. It's like electricity. And so you can use electricity or that kind of polarness because that's how most of the world, most of the time we operate. But it doesn't make you think about what could be beyond that, because I think it's a silly thought to think like, okay, well, we perceive two forces generally in the world. That's all there is.
Well, it's so ingrained that you need some sort of exercise to attempt to get out of it. I'm listening to this book called A Course in Miracles. It's like a 70s cult type. It was huge in the 70s. Anyway, I just heard about it so many times, and then I met this dude, and he was talking about the Course in Miracles. This old guy here in Austin, and Max from Eve 6. I think he was. Yeah, he was doing the Marianne Williamson stuff. Yeah. It was kind of new agey cult stuff. Anyway, it's pretty interesting. And the first book is like theoretical, if you want to call it that. It's Christian Hinduism. It's kind of Hinduism type non-dualism in Christian language. So all of the language is Christian, but then behind it is some sort of non-dualistic Gnostic type stuff. And then the workbook is like these mental exercises, at least so far. And the first one is you do it twice a day. You sit in a room and anything that enters into your kind of visual field or enters into your imagination, whatever that comes into your consciousness, you say to yourself that it's meaningless. And you just say that over and over and over. So you do like mantra-like exercises. And then the next day you start assigning value to things according to how you value them as they enter your consciousness. And then the next day you say, this, I don't understand this, and so on. And it does actually have an interesting effect, because anything that enters into your mind, if you describe it as meaningless, and then the next day you actually realize, oh, I do have these subtle preferences towards things that I didn't realize. And I do have a kind of ranking, the same way people are ranking our songs. Like I was in my bedroom and I was doing the second one, and I realized, oh, my wooden bed frame has actually much higher value to me than most of the other things in my room. But it was all subconscious, it was all, I wasn't aware of the kind of affinity and attachment that I had to things. And then, I'm highly attached to Willow and, all that kind of stuff. And it was just like a mental exercise, I guess, to kind of clear some cobwebs to see what maybe is actually going on.
Yeah. Is it purely your own affinities or your own making, or is there an actual attraction or valuation of things, and maybe it starts at life, like things that have life, another human, a dog, a wooden thing, if it's real wood, is a tree, which has some form of life still in it, and then you ask the question, what is life? Because everything then could be considered life. But is it degrees of life, degrees of consciousness that you feel an affinity to, and it's not just your own kind of programming?
I mean, it definitely feels alive, that frame, because it's nice wood. And it's, so, I mean, yeah, maybe, I don't know.
See, when you talk about that type of exercise, and it's partially that's what the song Madman that I wrote, great writer, is about.
Let's find out what the guy on Discord thinks of that one.
There's a line in I think it's the third verse, something about lying awake at night and a lone man walking a parade. And that's how I often feel at night, because it's easier to do at night. Part of your brain has gone to sleep, and I've had this sensation, and maybe people are going to commit me to some mental hospital here, but of literally just myself, whatever that means, just being passed by thousands of people, and they even have kind of a visual aspect to them of standing like I was in a parade, going by me. So they could be impressions I've received over my many years, like walking past people, that mixed with thoughts, mixed with like little internal versions of me that are just parading around my head, making a bunch of noise. And sometimes you find yourself wanting to go with the parade or walk with the parade, or you become particularly interested in one of the members of that parade that's running around in your head. Other times you feel like they're all threatening to you, like you kind of feel a bit of, it's, I guess, dissociative, like, who the fuck are these people in my head, which is a funny thing to think about. Just like a side topic, when you talk about, like a crazy person you see on the street yelling at the voices in their head, like how far off is any one of us from that?
One bad trip.
Yeah, it's one bad thing where you're not able to it's like that mild little layer of separation, because everyone has some form of internal dialogue, or right. I would assume.
Yeah, we went to a Halloween party yesterday, and someone was talking about their bad trip that they had on an ayahuasca type thing, which is so common here in Austin. Everyone's done ayahuasca, even George Bush, I'm assuming. But it was like, it was so extreme. And it takes one event like that,
Yeah, but so yeah, the exercise that you were talking about, looking at these various thoughts that enter your consciousness, and it's and then taking almost a robotic approach to how you react to them. Like, as in, okay, well, today we ignore, today you value, today you do. Like, that's a very useful way of doing it, because it allows you to not necessarily get too identified or connected with any one of the thoughts, because you're just trying to be much more like a robotic filter of like, okay, there's 10 things coming at me, and just watch them, rather than be like, oh, I agree, I disagree, or
it's hard to. Yeah, I found the actual statements useful, because it's hard to just look at things as they are. You need some sort of prompt, you know. So like, even the I don't understand this thing, if you do it sincerely, and anything you look at, you don't, you know, it's just endless. It goes on endlessly. How complex it is, and how never ending it is, and how little you understand about it. You know, it just never stops going back. I think there's a Buddhist thing, when you eat the pear, think of the pear farmer. I think that gets to try to see the kind of cause or the history behind anything.
Well, yeah, and see the scale of everything. The Teen Boba Fett over on the Twitch chat says, apparently the brain cannot make a new face in our dreams, so the people we see in our dreams are people we've seen while awake. Yeah, that, I mean,
I've heard that before. I
don't know.
I don't know how they could ever prove that.
Yeah, you'd have to be in me bloody head.
You'd have to be in my bloody dreams. Like,
but look, I would say, for the most part, that sounds mostly likely that, you know, most of what our dreams are is some form of replaying of things we've seen.
I met a person who has face blindness, genuine face blindness, cannot remember faces.
We should rob that motherfucker.
So he carries like a book around. He writes down, and he remembers outfits. And he was saying, you know, my friends I'll know when their wardrobe has changed before they do. You know, I'll say, oh, you're wearing a new jacket or something like that, and they say, how do you know that?
Geez, yeah, that's strange.
You'd be able to test that person though.
He was not lying. You know, he had like a memento book of writing down.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Teen Boba Fett was asking, what do people who are born blind dream? That's an interesting question. There must be studies and or people talking about that. People that were born blind describing what a dream feels like.
Yeah, I actually haven't heard a blind person describe a dream. So I'm sure it's out there. You could probably YouTube it and someone would describe a dream.
Have you seen how significant it is when people put the colorblind glasses on, though, for them? When they see it, you know, those glasses which kind of like allow them to see...
you mean people that are colorblind?
People who are colorblind, they put these glasses on, and the glasses like polarize the light so that they actually start distinguishing certain colors. So they see purple and green, or whatever ones that are being conflated. They see them separately for the first time, and they have like enormous emotional reactions. So can you imagine just seeing for the first time?
Yeah. Well, same thing. Have you seen the videos of kids getting cochlear implants?
Yeah.
It's like...
Well, Say My Name friend says, I imagine they dream of what they think objects look like using their own imagination. But you see, saying that, like, what does look mean to someone who has never seen? Like what they think objects look like. I mean, you would have to have been born blind. As hard as it is for a blind person to imagine what seeing would be like, it's impossible for a seeing person to imagine what being born blind was. Because closing your eyes with 30, 40 years worth of visual history is not the same as having never had a visual history via the eyes.
Yeah.
You know?
I would imagine it's something that we wouldn't be able to totally translate with language. They're gonna have an abstract sensation, and they're gonna try to describe it in words, which we can only put into words by what we like have in our visual field. So
I wonder what kind of connection there is then between the senses, because you can sense shape, and then how would your blind person's sense of shape connect to what they might have in any kind of internal vision sense? This is actually makes me think this would be worth finding, because obviously that people have discussed this, but blind people must have discussed this concept before.
It reminds me of the fable or the kind of spiritual story of the three blind people feeling different parts of the elephant and describing it to each other.
Yeah, well, tell that because
I don't know. I don't remember exactly the detail, but basically, there's three blind men, and they come across an elephant, and they're each touching different parts of the elephant. One's touching the trunk, one's touching the feet, and the other one's touching the tail. And they describe this elephant, the whole, as only the things that they can touch and feel and get a sense of. So the person touching the tail says it's a broom. We're clearly holding a broom that's, it's spiky. Kind of hairs on the end. The one touching the trunk is saying, I can't remember exactly what it is.
Right.
Like it's a, I can't remember what that is. But then the foot, he's saying, it's a tree trunk. We're touching a tree trunk. And the point of it is that it's a little bit how we go through life, is that we're trying to describe things only by what we're seeing, and we're seeing one tiny little part of it.
Yeah, I mean, even just on the visual front, we're seeing this miniature slither of what the electromagnetic spectrum is. Like we see visual light, it's tiny when you look at where it's just what scientists know about, and who knows what's beyond what they don't know about.
Yeah, and
I'm not suggesting scientists don't have anything they don't know about. For anyone that's wondering, they know everything. Here, Lil Pump 17 says on the Twitch, Dylan looks like he's meditating on the couch. Love the new podcast look. Willow is part of the podcast. I like this. Someone's at the cross-legged podcast and the forbidden maraca on the table.
Yeah, Willow started this howling thing only recently, and it seems to be exclusively for like barbershop music. If you play Swan Silvertones, she will howl reliably. It's very bizarre.
I thought Danny was in Johnny's place and vice versa. The hat threw me off.
I thought there were two of you.
Hey, y'all look alike. Anything going on in the news?
News.
Events. Important.
Gossip. Stories. Terrifying. Concerning.
This is the news.
This is the news. This is the news.
This is the news.
This is how we should do the news segment, how we just did it. While that cuts to that little graphic, we just ask each other, is there anything going on in the news? And then that we can only talk about things that we come up with in that minute. No research. Someone says here, Elon Musk took over Twitter, right? Did that actually happened?
I think so.
Yeah.
Did the check clear?
Yeah. It's, and everything's changed. Like the whole world has changed. It's now that he's taken it over, everything. The Twitter's changed. Everything's different.
Is free speech back, or is it gone? Who's?
I don't know. Yeah, Elon.
The outrage about one billionaire buying a thing from another company of billionaire. There's just billionaires, and like they've always been billionaires.
I'm looking down the news section on Twitter, and there's nothing that I can see worth talking about.
He's firing tons of people, I guess.
Yeah, which who cares?
Yeah.
It's like you become
the
the leader of something. That's what you get to do. You get to fire the people you don't want working.
I think the previous CEO got a $40 million severance package.
Oh, poor guy. Got fired.
And also running the most horrible website on earth.
Yeah, I keep trying to go on there and think, what are we doing wrong? Because if we tweet something, we maximum get 10 likes or retweets, which is not much worse than the rest of our socials. But I just think it is actually a cesspool. Even from the people that are doing it well or trying to be more or less negative on there, it just seems it's like a useless format.
I think it's good for keeping up with current events as quickly as possible, and that's about it. Because when it first came out, the whole idea, and everyone laughed at it, which like now in retrospect, it was kind of silly to laugh at it because that's the way the world was going, which was that it was limited to whatever it was, 29 syllables or something like that. You could only tweet that amount. Then they increased it a tiny bit, and they've still limited it. So you can't get anything real or any depth across unless you do threads, which no one has the patience for. So it's basically for news that's moving very quickly, current events, and it is good for that. Like, I get my news from Twitter.
Yeah, it's quicker than waiting for a website to update a story or something.
Yeah, or and hopefully
I just retweet all threads and say this. I don't know what they're about. I just like to say that this.
And hopefully there's when you go to a website for news, you're also dealing with like their curation, and Twitter's obviously got curated stuff, but it's nice to see trending things because then you get to go down the categories and just see what's trending and what thing.
Yeah, but it brings up, and Elon Musk is talking about he's going to fix a lot of this stuff because you have the problem is, yes, curated news threads are a problem because you always have someone imposing their opinion on what should be news. That's always been a problem since news. But the bot problem is also a problem. When there's literally millions of bots, and this is not just a Twitter thing, it's everywhere. Like, it's very hard, becoming much and much harder to tell what's real and what's not.
Well, what's his name?
Yeah.
He's just started a decentralized Twitter, essentially.
Who?
Jack Dorsey. He just and they had like 30,000 signups. I mean, we'll see if it's actually. I've just seen the headlines, so I don't know if it's
of Twitter. Or,
yeah.
But is he connected to Twitter now anymore or not?
I don't know. A friend of mine just sent me an article said no, they're not competitors. They're collaborating. So I don't know what the I haven't read it yet. I don't know what the context of the article is, but because they've had back and forth tweets, Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey, and they're quite. They have an agenda basically with how social networks should be run and what they should be limited to. So, like, I don't know. Maybe there's some collaboration. I haven't read the article.
I think what's interesting is that the bot thing and the fact that you can have anonymity and no link to your physical person is the pendulum will swing now eventually to the point where your online activities are tied directly to your actual identity for any kind of popular platform.
Well,
so,
like PayPal tried to implement,
right? Yeah,
not just connecting what you might say to your
and that'll be its own set of. I mean, this at the moment, it's kind of fucked up that there's millions of bots trying to influence everything about everything, war, propaganda, anything you can think of. There's bots out there.
I like that people were worried that bots are going to influence elections, like voting matters.
That bot thing. If people think that's not the majority of the internet and who they're interacting with and who's actually drumming up like division. We've talked about this before, but go on that Reddit, which is run the subreddit, which is run completely by bots. Bots post headlines or like opinions, and only bots. It's like an experiment of AI bots. Only bots respond, and there's full-on conversations. Which, if you were reading it, some of them are strange, but you kind of go, "Oh, well, I guess that's just a strange couple of people having a weird conversation."
Yeah, you've seen real chats or had conversations with people that were less intelligible than what these bots are doing.
I caught myself saying almost word for word the same thing to someone, but separated by a few weeks, because the order of a conversation just went in the same way, and then I was literally like running a loop,
Bot?
Yeah, and it's amazing how quickly, like on Twitter or Reddit, how the right, like, this is why it's kind of genius. Who's ever programmed this AI bots to drum up some controversy or drum up division and things like that. Like, it's amazing how quickly one well calculated and well formed sentence in response to someone can just create thousands of people interacting with it.
Yeah.
Jesse's saying he might try and join remotely, but I'll see if we can get that to work.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, if your fixation is attention, and then you realize that division creates that addiction and that attention, or false controversy, or real whatever, then it's all going to feed that.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a while there, I think that they pulled it back because they were maybe fearing blowback from the governments around the world, but Facebook was just, every single thing on Facebook for a while was like some huge debate about some shit. And now when I go on there, it seems to be like people posting personal updates again. And I don't think that was driven by them. It was driven by the algorithm.
I think if you listen to Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan, he has like a 3-hour interview with him, and he's comes across so much more normal than you'd expect. I mean, he's still kind of strange, and he's obsessed with tech and just basically the evolution of tech. Like that is the pinnacle of
Hey, breaking
what.
news.
Oh,
Jesse, you're on. I don't know if you can hear us. We haven't got our headphones and everything hooked up, and we can't hear you just yet. So give me 1 second to make sure if I can do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm listening on Twitch, so it's probably like a 10-second delay.
Sorry, bear with us, guys. We just have breaking news here.
I have a very good reason to not be on these. You've got a new baby. She arrived last Thursday, so completely upstaged my new song release.
1 second, Jesse. We weren't set up for this 1 second.
But a much more important event. Her name's Imogen, so I'll see how long she lasts on here without getting upset, but I thought I'd say a quick hi.
So now I have a daughter. Jesse has 3 daughters. Congus, the boy band, will be retiring in 6 to 8 months once all these girls are trained up on the respective instruments, and we're going to be doing Congus version 2. The future is female, and
the future for us is email. We'll be managing the girl band.
Yeah.
What's so funny is she looks so much like your first daughter.
They make so much more money, though.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
can you hear us, Jess?
Yeah, she really does look like Eve, but she's starting to kind of, even day to day, getting her own sort of a personality. Yeah, I'm listening on Twitch, so there's literally like a 10-second delay, so I'll probably hear you 5 or 10 seconds after you say something. But I just wanted to come on and say hi, and then I'll let you guys get back to pontificating.
Well, yeah. Now everyone knows if they're questioning why Jesse's not on the podcast or why he may pop in and out. This is why.
Yeah.
Something a little more important than Elon Musk Twitter news.
Yeah. Though, once we find a little bit of a rhythm, there will be more music and more work done.
Well, I mean, yeah, we put out a song on Friday called "Turn This Round," which Jesse wrote and finished. So he's having babies, finishing songs.
You gotta teach Eve to comp vocal takes.
Oh man, yeah. If we could just train.
Thank you
all
guys
of
for
our
the
kids to do all
congratulations in the
menial
comments.
tasks. This is what every parent.
Congus onesie, yeah. I need to order one of those. Oh, I think we just all talked over each other. But anyway, yeah, I'll let you guys get back to it. Thank you for all the nice comments, and I'll see you soon.
See ya.
See ya.
Say bye, Imogen.
So that is our news. Where were we talking about?
Zuckerberg. Yeah. Anyway, he was talking about that. He was talking about how he noticed that they noticed that it was clearly on purpose, and he was trying to make it out like that's not what we wanted to do, but it was drumming up obviously a ton of advertising money. And but he made a point of, he kept on hammering away that like he wants Facebook to be a place where people share their personal stories. So they started limiting news and things like that. It'd show up in your feed, or the algorithm would push it and prioritize it differently, and personal updates would be prioritized higher. And so
Right. So this brings up the idea of attention being what people want all the time, because it wasn't like the political topic. Now, if their personal posts receive more attention, that's what they're going to be encouraged to do again. We're back at like the single cell organism moving towards pleasure and away from something aversive.
yeah, we need to get ahead of the curve and start posting selfies again.
Yeah. But that Idris Shah's got that idea. He said, people think that they want to learn Sufism, and really what they want is attention. I get thousands of letters, and all they really want is just someone to talk to. They're not really interested in this. And then that Ido Portala movement guy, he said that people they want to be touched. He says the amount of people who take Brazilian jiu-jitsu classes just because they're lacking in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's like a silly thing, but sometimes if you could just give someone a hug, you could stop a lot of wars almost.
Yeah.
It compounds and then it spreads like a disease. That negativity that one person can have can spread and do such damage. So I think it's why it's so important, like why the children are the future, because if it goes wrong there, it's very hard to fix things later,
There's he's been around for a long time, an Israeli psychologist that's doing the rounds on all the podcasts and Instagram quotes and stuff like that. His name's something Gab.
I know who you're talking about. I can't remember.
Yeah, if someone can post it, they probably know who he is. And his whole thing is basically that
The addiction guy?
He deals with addiction, as well.
Yeah.
It's like childhood trauma, basically, that kids are just not hugged enough, and especially babies and toddlers, this idea that to let kids cry it out is a warped idea. He differentiates between indulging or babying kids at certain ages, but at the infant and small toddler age, he says that basically you can't comfort them enough.
Yeah, we've been observing that because Juna is now, 19 months, a year and a half, and part of you as a parent's like, sometimes you just want like your kid to just go to bed and stop crying, so that it was the thing, like just let them cry it out, and then you actually begin to think about it for yourself a little more, and like a 18-month-old creature that came from nothing in a dark room, and you're just going to let them cry it out. Like if I took most adults and put them in a dark room for a night with no context, like put them out in the jungle, like you'd be fucking shitting yourself. Like
his name's Gabor Mate.
Right. Yeah.
He's in the 70s, a psychologist. Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's there's obviously a line at some point, and he makes the point that when you see a child that has basically been indulged too much and they are become kind of brats, he says it's most likely not from too much love or attention or affection when they were young. He says it's probably from the anxieties of the parents, because they weren't loved enough and they weren't touched enough, that they then excessively smother a child because they need to feel comfort, and so all their anxieties now, even though it's associated with this affection or this touch and this hugging, it's all their anxieties now just being put onto this kid.
Yeah.
And so it differentiates between that and like a kid who's 9 months old and is crying for some reason. They're crying in their crib or in their room.
The problem that I've noticed is turning into like a parenting podcast, but it's interesting because you can't look at adults and try to figure things out. I don't think it gets too complicated most of the time with adults. There's too many layers of shit that happen to us to understand us properly, and it's good to observe a kid. But the part of the problem, I think, why people did go down the let them cry it out is because of how quickly smart babies become. Like, they do start to realize that they can manipulate with crying much earlier than you would think is possible. So then part of you thinks like, well, I don't want to encourage them to be manipulative with their crying. But it's mixed again, because they're not, it's like, it's manipulating, but not, they still could actually be upset and scared or whatever it is, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Well, now speaking of crying babies. Yeah.
Burb says, I think you guys are good dads. Thanks, Burb.
I hope I'm not a good dad. If I am, I'm unaware that I'm a dad.
Check in like 19 to 25 years, and if we've raised a bunch of influencers, you can take that back.
You want to be on the podcast, hey?
Let's talk about our songs that we picked for this week. So I always listen to that song "Shake Your Ass" by Mystical. You guys familiar with that one? And then Danny brought another song off that album, and we were listening to it. It's called "Bouncing Back, Bumping Me Against the Wall" by Mystical and Pharrell Williams. Dude, Mystical is the fucking best, actually. His grooves and his rhythm in his voice is just unbelievable in his verses. And also he does it, it's kind of a similar thing that I've noticed that certain South African artists do, where they can take like the corniest sounds, you know, like a fake saxophone, some really shitty fake drums, and make it cool. And he's able to do that because he's like a lot of the instrumentation and production on his records theoretically should be bad.
No, it sounds like
awesome.
a carnival ride or something. Yeah.
Oh, so sorry. Back to, will you lie to your kids about Santa, Easter Bunny, and Tooth Fairy? What do you mean lie to them about that? Okay, so my song.
I'm gonna lie to them about quantum physics.
Yeah. My song that I picked for lyric is by Joni Mitchell, the only good Canadian artist. Her song called Borderline. It's off an album called Turbulent Indigo. And people always say, like, what's an album you can listen to all the way down? This is almost that for me. I do not like that song Sex Sells on that album. I don't know if you guys have listened to the whole album. Other than that, it is a masterpiece of an album. So the lyric is from a song on that album called Borderline. You snipe so steady, you snipe so steady, you snub so snide, so ripe and ready to diminish and deride. You're so quick to condescend, my opinionated friend. All you deface, all you defend is just a borderline, another borderline, just a borderline.
She talking about us?
Yeah, it's like a lot of the lyrics on that album particularly do seem very pointed at you. As the listener, obviously they're not, but when something kind of cuts so deeply to the core of humanity or humans, it does feel like it's personally directed at you. Yeah. And she's obviously just a fucking genius. But I did also think, I've listened to that album, I hear, maybe you guys have heard this or not, a little bit of, there's some resentment or there's something in this album that comes across to me a little. Well, not resentment, like angry. Like there's some negativity.
Turbulent Indigo?
Yeah. I mean, I know it's about certain topics and things in her life, but
a lot of it is about, I mean, there's Magdalene Laundry is on that about the Catholic.
Yeah. What I mean is it's not like she seems to have attached to certain things. It's not like certain albums that address historical injustices or wrongdoing where it's like because she has other songs like that, like Job's song, the Sire of Sorrow, that's a lot more what's the word,
impartial.
She's very partial in this album. I'm not saying it's a bad thing or anything, it's just
I think it makes for that. I think it makes for good music sometimes, like not. I think that's part of the problem. I think that's part of the problem we actually have. Yeah, is that once you start writing something from your emotions or your heart, your rational mind starts either defending or like rationalizing
tempering it.
Yeah, tempering it. And so then you end up with a very rational lyric about something that started off as not rational, you know, and it may be there's truth in that kind of detachment or non-attachment to it, but there's also truth in the kind of anger that may have come out of that lyric. And some of those songs, like, are legitimately angry human experiences.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of the early Bob Dylan stuff where it was very anti-war, like it was very typical like angry teenager about politics, like we all have, and they're great songs. But even in those, I feel like he always had something that made them a little bit more than like, fuck the government, war is bad. Like, I'm not saying I disagree with it. Like, those, I'm fine with those ideas. But it's nice when there is it's like a little bit of detachment thrown in or something. It seems immature, basically, when someone commits too fully to one idea.
Well,
but yeah, you get cool songs out of it. Like
big idea. I mean,
Yeah.
big.
Killing in the name of.
yeah. Oh, I was going to say, like, if you listen to like NWA, like "Fuck the Police" or whatever, it's like, yes, I don't want a well thought out, or not even not saying that lyric's not well thought out, but like, I don't want it to be tempered. Sometimes you just want raw, like, aggression. Make your fucking point and make it strong.
I think part of the difficulty is, emotional states are fleeting. And so it's difficult to then finish a song unless it comes out really quickly and you finish it and you just put it out like that. Because almost every song you write, even if you really like it and it's one of your favorite songs, I can't think of one of my songs that, other than maybe Real Life. I think I like Real Life like the best in terms of its, like, for me, I can look back on it and not have a little bit of cringe. There's very few songs you can look back on because that one state that you started off in is fleeting. And you look back on it from another state, and you're like, that's not actually really how I feel.
Yeah. I mean, we did it even with the Chevy Mustang song "Man in the Middle," because I remember I came with this when we were in LA. We had hired a publicist or something to work one of the Chevy Mustang songs. I forget exactly what happened. Basically, like, we held back a video because they said they were going to get a premiere on some important blog, and then in typical publicist fashion, we basically just paid them a few $1,000s and then they did fuck all. So we were all like really angry, like fucking again, some like middleman publicist person. So we came in, we started writing this song, and it was basically about like fuck middlemen. They're always getting in the way of like this thing. And at the end of it, because we were so strict when we were writing Chevy Mustang stuff with Max, that Chevy had to play both sides of it. Like at the end of the song, he ends up saying like, I think we should become middlemen. And so that worked out in a comical way, but we did the same technique, which is like, you come in like, fuck publicists. And then you're like, well, what do you mean? Well, some publicists.
Yeah.
Are
Like,
good,
are there any good publicists we can get this song out to?
All right. So those are my songs.
All right. I did. This is relevant because if you guys follow my Songland Farms Instagram, I'm going to post a picture later that I've been saving for Halloween. It's a pretty sweet capture in the garden. But I was trying to think of, because I wanted to do a reel, and I was trying to think of a song that I could use it. And then I remembered that Us Three has a song called Snakes. When they keep on repeating snakes. Anyway, Us Three is this 90s band, kind of jazz, hip hop, really in that era of kind of exploration, hip hop exploration and experimentation. It's really cool. Some of the stuff, I actually listened to it in the car today. Not all of it is very good. But they had a big song called Cantaloupe Island, or Flip Fantasia, I think was the name of it. Yeah. Anyway, it's like jazz and hip hop.
They were sampling
lyrics.
all the old Blue Note. They were on Blue Note Records, so they were sampling.
But they also had a live saxophonist who's really good. On this song Snakes, he's playing after every verse. He plays a solo or a lick that sounds like a snake. Your snake facade, see through your camouflage or guard. Beyond your charm life's evil, laying calm. In our midst exist viperous heads who hiss, slither, committed to trick, wisdom, venomous spit, snakes. If you listen to it, it's a pretty sweet song. So that's the lyric and song together.
Yeah, they were a cool band, and there was a period in the 90s where I felt like hip-hop was getting a little more interesting and trying to expand things, and then I don't know what the fuck happened. Danny?
I've got I've been listening to that 2020 Bob Dylan album. It's called Rough and Rowdy Ways, I think. I'm not sure. This track is Key West, or Philosopher Pirate, I think is the subtitle. Anyway, I was building my little deck in my yard, and I was listening to this album, and political solicitor came to my door to try to get me to vote for something, and once I closed the door on him, that line was sung immediately. Which the line is, I play both sides against the middle. So I closed the door on this political guy, and then Bob Dylan says, "I play both sides against the middle." And it was just good, amazing timing, I thought.
That's one thing I miss about living in a smaller neighbor. Like we're out a bit more rural where I'm at. Like no one's walking down these streets to come knock on your door. It's nice sometimes to meet those people. Just
really, because I just got a sign, a no soliciting sign.
Oh yeah, no. I
feel bad for people going door to door. Like they gotta do what they gotta do. But I'm just never going to buy anything, listen to what you have to say, even if I agree with you. You're just wasting your time. So I've just figured out to save them the time.
It must work. They do it like political canvassing. They go door to door. Some people. I mean, I got to meet the person.
There's a bunch of it in my neighborhood. Like there's people trying to sell you solar panels or whatever. That kind of stuff.
I guess they're also, if it's political, they're basically trying to rile up the choir, because I cannot imagine going to someone's house and being like changing it, like, no, I was going to vote.
It's just to remind you to get out and vote. Yeah.
It's like getting someone to say out loud that they're going to do something, because then you do it more likely or whatever.
Yeah, get them committed.
Yeah. We should go door to door and try
they should get people, if they got people to put a draft in their Instagram that says, and like with the sticker, I voted, then they would go and do it. And you say, well, I can't post this without actually going to vote. So,
did you get a sticker?
Me?
Yeah, from the guy. Did he give you anything?
No.
They should have combined the Halloween and the voting thing and like given out candy or something.
Willow was barking at him like he was a bad guy. I said, I listened to my dog.
What's that comment?
Does she vote Republican or Democrat, your dog?
Willow?
Independent?
She's probably a Republican.
What's the scariest song?
She's scared of everything. Like she's, you know what I mean? Every stranger she thinks is an intruder. Like she's a Republican.
Oh, yeah.
Team Boba Fett, it's since Halloween, what's the scariest song you've heard? Well, we were talking about yesterday because at the party we went to, they were playing, everyone was kind of telling ghosts, alien stories, and they played the soundtrack from, I think, Harry Potter or one of those things, and it's good. It's actually good music, like good kind of fantasy horror music, but Danny was like, put on some Penderecki. That's the scariest shit you'll ever hear. Maybe Johnny will post a link to it.
There was a Polish composer. He might actually still be alive, named Krzysztof Penderecki. He did a lot of the score for
Penderecki or Penderecki.
It's spelled Penderecki, but I believe it's Penderecki. Like the Polish letters don't mean the things that we think they mean. But he did the score for The Shining. Like basically, modern horror music is ripping off this dude, because he was one of the first to do it, and he was doing it long before he wasn't writing for horror films. It just worked so well that directors came to him, I believe. And he has a song called "Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima." Just like it's hard to describe the music because there's very few things. Like, you know, the feeling of getting like on the back of your neck, what is it called? Like when your hair stands up. He does this in the most terrifying way. I've been driving late at night and my Apple Music shuffles and it hits one of those songs, and it actually scared the shit out of me one time. What he does, and you'd think like, how can that be? It's like violins and classical music, but holy shit, it's terrifying music. Him
and there's another guy. They came up with their own kind of orchestration. So all of the way they mark up their scores, because sometimes they'll be telling a whole violin section to kind of find their way to this point, as opposed to writing out every note,
Yeah, I mean, let me just see if I can play like 10 seconds of it, just so we know what we're talking about here.
And then we'll leave him with that.
Yeah. Let's see.
Drinking warm water before bed erases years of damage to teeth and gums.
Not it.
People are reversing decay and repair.
You screen sharing?
I will, yes. I don't want to get us get the stream pulled around
You know-
because it's copyrighted, but a lot of people do that now. Like, ooh, scary violin music. This
doesn't
to
work,
me is different. He finds the right combination of notes and then microtonality, like in between notes.
Did he ever write any nice songs?
I don't know. Penderecki, the
Because
I want to
there's
play you a
some-
lull. I want to play you like
Do you
he's
remember
trying to
the-
seduce a girl.
Do you remember the movies Saw?
Yeah.
I saw Saw 1 or Saw 2 or something like that, and I remember coming out of it going like, whoever made this is severely fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, why would you want to put that out into the world? It's so fucking disturbing. And sometimes, like hearing his music, I'm like, why did he make that music? Like what?
Well, I think about that all the time. I guess it goes back to the initial part of this podcast of like, these things exist, horrifying, terrifying things exist in the universe naturally, and then like, there's nothing wrong with them. Yeah, but I have the same feeling. I was watching that American Horror Story, like the first season. I thought the first season was done well. Started the second season, and like 6 severed people into it or whatever it was. I was just like, why the fuck am I watching this? Like, why do I need to fill my brain with this? And
The only way I can think of it is in terms of evolution, that the species or that nature programs for a spectrum of behavior, and necessarily we notice the extremes. But from nature's perspective, like if you were to program a specific aversion to a lack of cleanliness or disease, or if you were to be narrow in your programming of the species, that this smell of rotting flesh should be this aversive only to everyone, you would probably set the species up for failure, because there wouldn't be enough variety of behavior to find out what is actually advantageous.
Right.
Oh, you can eat that and you can't eat that, and you can actually eat this rotting thing
There'd be
if it's
no
not too
good
far
blue-
gone.
No good
Yeah.
blue cheese.
So that it programs this huge spectrum of behavior, and that's why there are morticians, and there are people who are not disgusted by anything, and there are people who are attracted to all this kind of stuff, and then there are people who find it completely aversive because at some point that degree of cleanliness was desirable.
Right, but so there appears to be some biological or evolutionary necessity for it, but like, when does it go too far? Like, when you see someone that's obsessed with the macabre, like beyond a certain point, everyone just goes, that's too much, or like.
But that's because there is a kind of, most people are in the middle.
Right.
So everyone's going to have a similar opinion about the extremes. People are going to have a similar opinion about puritanical people who think, that you should never have sex, or you should, you need to, like, you can't shake a woman's hand, or some, whatever shit like that, where they take some kind of rigidity to one side, and then there are people who are, making
Chaos.
Saw movies, or in the real world, there's Jeffrey Dahmer. He's not making a movie; he's actually doing it. So the spectrum is so much bigger than the world of entertainment.
Yeah, you guys have seen that movie Event, like while we're on this Halloween stuff, that movie Event Horizon from the 90s. And like, it kind of stands up in that I watched it some years ago. It's still, to me, terrifying, even though it's a bit dated and all that. And I think what was terrifying about it is the idea, and this is a spoiler alert if anyone wants to go watch that movie. It's basically like a parallel universe that is only got the negative. It's hell essentially, but a visualization of it, and that's what was terrifying about it, is because the idea that we perceive one reality that seems to be love oriented, let's say, or good oriented, or we try to make it that way. But there must be a fucking flip side to this. Like, even like that fucking show Stranger Things, like the upside down world, like these other realities must exist or could exist.
Right.
And that's terrifying to think about, because I don't know, it's like a scary thought to think that the opposite of what we like or aim towards exists out there.
Yeah. Well, people must have thought that the Divine Comedy was disgusting at the time, and
Yeah.
and I'm not comparing Saw to the Divine Comedy. I'm just saying that the labeling of something as macabre or gross or wrong or whatever is highly subjective.
Yeah.
And highly dependent on your context and what's acceptable and whatever.
So the Divine Comedy was written by who?
Dante.
But who did did he do illustrations also, or there were those, because there's the paintings of Dante's Inferno, but those were by different artists as interpretations of Dante's Inferno. That is an interesting thing, because I think there is some purpose to this visualization of the horror of hell, that obviously a lot of like Christianity has just become like very like, we're going to scare you into being good sort of approach to things. But I was listening to this guy, Bishop Robert Barron. He's a Catholic bishop, and he's an amazing communicator of Christianity and Catholic ideas, that is able to talk in a modern way. Like, he's not opposed to science, and he's finding a bridge between these two kind of seemingly opposite worldviews. And he talks a lot about Dante's Inferno, and the way he talks about it, because if you see the images from Dante's Inferno, they just look like, it's like a horror movie. It's the nine levels of hell graphically just put out. But it was on the Lex Friedman podcast. I asked him, like, what are the 7 deadly sins, and can you rank them? Like, what's the deadliest? And he had this really interesting point about pride being the cardinal, is the most important and most deadly of the sins, because he says people in today's day and age tend to think of lust, because everyone is as always obsessed with sex right now, as lust is always like the sin of lust. And he's like, that one's almost the least problematic, because it's easy to understand, it's attached to the body, it's just a thing that kind of happens. He says pride, and he had this really good way of putting it, is when you believe you are God, and you cave in on yourself because of the weight and heaviness of the sin of pride. It's that I am the center of all things, that I am the beginning and end of everything. And that is such a heavy state to be in, to be full of pride, that you cave in on yourself and effectively become a black hole. And so in Dante's Inferno, the person at the center of hell, the lost layer of hell, is Satan, Judas, and there's like 2 other baddies in there with him. And he described that as being like, he's the most prideful, because that was Satan's great sin, is to say, I am God. But it was just interesting, because if you try not to get too caught up in whatever resentments all of you listeners are out there have got against, Christianity and all that sort of thing, there's some fascinating usage of language, of horror, of these. Like, how else would you describe the horror of what pride can do to you? Because if you observe it in yourself throughout your life, if you allowed it to go to its extreme, you would become that horrible. Because I think ultimately, to be truly evil, for lack of a better word, you would have to be completely caved in on yourself to have an entire lack of empathy. And it can only come from something like that everything is about me and my serving me. And it's a really brilliant way to describe something.
I think that I don't know. I think there's contradictions. I feel contradictory about this, because I think that there is only you, and at the same time isn't. In other words, I think to intellectually defer to some God as a kind of way to appease yourself is negative. But to do it non-intellectually maybe has value.
Well, yeah, there's this Sufi, I believe, idea of that to enter the kingdom of heaven cannot be done for the glory of heaven or from the fear of hell. It's like, you can't just, if you're seeking the goods and the fruits of your labor, as a lot of other religions put it, or you're running because you think there's a scary monster, like, that's not necessarily the approach to it. But there is something, what you were saying is that there's not that it is all about you, but it's not necessarily the you that you would want to give everything to, or I don't know, how would you say that?
It's maybe it's just simple analogy, like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
There are other things, and there is something outside of yourself, perhaps, or who knows. But in any case, any kind of revelation can only happen within you. Can only happen because of you.
Yeah.
Either maybe that revelation is some form of submission, as opposed to like conquering some idea or owning it, or owning the truth or something like that. Maybe it's not. Maybe it doesn't take that form. Maybe it does involve submission.
Well, submission, again, I guess it's going to get into a really complicated discussion, I guess, but it's the idea of submission still has tied into, I think, for most people, the idea that I am submitting. Like that, it's still me doing it. And this is where Eastern philosophy, I think, is particularly good about describing these things, is that there isn't this I in the way we like to use the word I that could submit. So it's not like, oh, I bow down to you, God, you're so great, look at me doing it. There is a real other, like words literally, you can't really discuss. We have a non-talking podcast from here on out, but yeah.
I submit. Well, no, we started off the Catholic guy talking about pride and being these
right,
seven things of hell. Just in the real world, you see even more suicides, or the suicides don't actually, at least in the Western world, don't seem to discriminate between wealthy, poor.
Right.
Like there are slight differences in all these different maybe demographics and stuff, but it doesn't discriminate. So it's clearly people can be in hellish outer circumstances and still want to end things because of their inner turmoil or their inner hell that they're experiencing.
I mean, Dave Chappelle had that great bit about that where he's talking about Anthony Bourdain, who killed himself, who by all external looks it was like, oh, that's everyone's dream life, doing what he's doing. Obviously he was tormented. And then he describes a friend of his who was like, this horror story of life, like parents died, lost his wife, kid got cancer. Like it was just one of those horrific stories. He's like, and it never occurred to him once to kill himself. So that I think, and when you think about where someone must be to get to the point of wanting to kill yourself, that's about as bad as you could. That's as bad as you can get, as deep as you can get into hell.
Yeah.
So the external representation of these things, as silly as it might seem to like be drawing little gargoyles and dragons and like the devil whipping people, like to someone that gets to the point of killing themselves, that's how bad it does feel, apparently, because the only escape for them is that way. So I think it's useful sometimes, that imagery. Not to get hung up on it and fetishize it like a lot of people do. Like they fetishize it, and you either end up as some weird, like negative priest who's become bad, or you listen to goth music too much, and neither of those things is good.
Maybe, but it's also it's not. If you think about life back then, the imagery was not that shocking.
Yeah,
it's the plague,
the Dark Ages.
Yeah, everything. There's no anesthetic. If you have a tooth pulled, you're in fucking screaming in pain. Anything that gets cut off, there's just like gangrene everywhere. So I mean, like a little painting is not.
Even the Middle Ages, I guess it depends where you were. Like my impression of the Middle Ages is just hell on earth everywhere, and that's obviously historically completely incorrect. There were parts and there were periods where it was really bad in a lot of places. But the general experience, like think in the Western world, how many people have had a surgery without anesthetic? Anything like that? Not that many. Now, if they take wisdom teeth out, you get knocked out. Like you're not even there. Yeah.
So the average experience of life in previous periods was just much closer to nature and highly painful. And all that kind of stuff.
It's like that subreddit, Nature is Metal.
Yeah.
You see the horror that is going on with lions eating things. All right, whatever. I don't know if we've figured anything out on this, but whatever. Fuck you. You guys didn't figure it out either.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll try and maybe do a stream from the studio, working on some music this week. If not, we'll be back next week doing a podcast. And if you haven't yet, go stream the new songs, do stories, reels, TikToks, whatever, however you find you can. Share it, get the word out there. It's called Turn This Round. It's available everywhere that music is streamed. If you would like to buy the instrumental and the high-quality waves versions of that, you can get those from our store, and I'll post a link to that right after we shut the stream down here. Otherwise, see you guys next week.
I like Team Boba Fett. This is the last comment on the thing, and I think we'll leave you with that. I know the meaning of life. Fuck you.
T-shirt.
Can we make a T-shirt out of that?
Yeah, but you can't selling a fuck you. There's only certain kinds of people that buy a
that's
fuck you
true.
shirt, and they're 55-year-old Republicans who are trying to be cool or something. All right, see you guys.